Okay, good work.
Look at that tiny traction.
I'm going to share with you tonight a couple of incredible stories. This week, we are reading about, just read in the Torah about the reunion of Yosef and Yaakov, and it's reminiscent to me of the work of the Rebbe's shluchim, Rebbe's emissaries throughout the world, to bring Jews together. So I want to share a couple of stories on that theme of how you see how the Rebbe sends someone to some city and the guy doesn't really know what his mission is, or many things that he has to accomplish in that place in that time, and Hashem arranges divine providence in a way that you could see it with your eyes. This week we read about the blessings that Yaakov gave his children. When it comes to Yehuda, the Torah says that Yaakov blessed Yehuda and said, Yehuda, you will be praised by your brothers. And chassidus explains that Yehuda represents Shemona Esrei, the fourth part of davening, where we are in a state of total submission to Hashem, the part of our soul which is able to completely submit and acknowledge and connect with Hashem is revealed in Shemona Esrei. But to get to Shemona Esrei, you have to have the parts of the prayers before, beginning with Shema. Shema is where it's called the Reuven part of prayer. Why? Because in Shema, at that stage of our prayers, we have a vivid connection to God. When Leah gave birth to Reuven, she said, God has seen my pain, now my husband will love me. So chassidus explains that Reuven, on a personal level, means the ability to see divine providence. And when you see divine providence in a vivid way, it brings out your love for Hashem. That's stage one, Reuven. Shimon is the second section of Shema, which mentions reward and consequences for keeping Torah and mitzvahs, because Shimon means to hear. Leah said when she gave birth to Shimon, God has heard that I was hated, and therefore she blessed me with a child. Hashem has blessed me with a child because he heard that I was hated. So Leah mentioned God heard that I was hated. So chassidus explains that the second section of Shema, which begins with, and if you will listen to God's commandments, refers to a scenario where a part of ourselves which doesn't have that vivid perception of godliness, and it's more like we hear about Hashem's truth from someone that we trust, but not as vivid as the first section of Shema. And because things aren't so vivid, that's why in the second section of Shema there is a discussion about reward and punishment, because things aren't so vivid. And the third part of the prayer, Levi, is associated with V'yatziv and Nachon. At the conclusion of Shema, we say 15 adjectives describing how great the Torah is. The Torah is true, the Torah is just, the Torah is right. And that's called the Levi part of Shema, because when Leah gave birth to Levi, she said, now my husband will love me. Now my husband will come close to me. So too, through the study of Torah, we become close to God. And after there's Reuven, and there's Shimon, and there's Levi, then when we do the Amidah prayer, we're able to achieve the Yehuda to be in a state of total connection with Hashem, total devotion to Hashem. Yehuda means to acknowledge, Yehuda means to submit, Yehuda means to be in a state of abnegation, Yehuda means to be in a state of total faith. So what starts us in this journey is seeing divine providence in a vivid way, Reuven. So I want to share a few stories on that theme of how we see seeing divine providence in the mission of the various Chabad rabbis, but it's not about Chabad rabbis. Every one of us is an emissary of God, an emissary of the Moshe Rabbeinu of our time, of the Rebbe, to bring Mashiach, to bring Jews closer to God. So the first story I want to share with you is about a teacher of mine who, I want to say his name, I don't have permission to say his name, but he was studying in a college campus. He was in his 20s, and a rabbi came over to him and said to him, was Sukkos, he says, would you like to say a blessing on a lulav, an etrog? He had never seen a lulav, an etrog before, and he didn't think it was important, so he said no. But after he said no, it hit him. Why did I say no? This is a Jewish thing. I'm Jewish. Why did I say no? And this Chabad rabbi never discovered this because he never met him again. But that experience planted a seed in this rabbi, in this man who became a very prominent Chabad rabbi. It was all because of him saying no to saying a blessing Luv and Esrog. A similar story, it's going viral now. I think it's about Rabbi Zevi Katz in Florida. This man met him. He was a graduate of YU, and he asked him if he wants to put on tefillin, and he said no. And he hadn't put on tefillin for years after he graduated college. And he just, he was brought up religious, but he just didn't. It wasn't a priority, and he stopped doing it. And then when the rabbi asked him to put on tefillin, he said no. But he started thinking to himself, "Have I fallen so low? Why did I say no? Why am I saying no to this?" And the same thing happened to him. For 12 years, he started to put on tefillin because of that encounter. And he only met Rabbi Katz 12 years later, and he said to him, "I just want you to know, I met you 12 years ago, and you probably chalked that up as a failure. You asked this guy, and he said no, but it wasn't a failure. You lit a spark in me, and I'm putting on tefillin for 12 years because you asked that question." There are Chabad emissaries in the most southern Chabad the Chabad emissaries which are serving in the most southern city are the Chabad emissaries in Bariloche, Argentina, which is a few hundred miles away from their neighbors in Chile. They really live in a very remote area. There are very few Jews that live there. There's no real community there. It's a tourist town, and they cater to the tourists in that city. It's a very lonely place. So they just arrived, and they're there for a couple of months. Rabbi and Mrs. Klein, and he put a menorah on his car. Those electric menorahs people attach to their cars. He's driving on one of these streets. There's very few Jews there. Again, there's just people that come there. They're tourists. There's no real community. And this guy is driving alongside him, and he sort of goes in front of him almost, and he forces the rabbi to stop the car. And the rabbi is like, "What's going on?" He says, "I can't believe it. You must be a rabbi." He said, Yeah, I am a rabbi." He said, "I can't believe it." He said, "I was living in this remote city, and I met this non-Jewish girl, and she was interested in pursuing the relationship and getting married, and I knew this was the wrong thing to do. But I also thought, if it was important to God, then God should give me a sign. And so I gave God an ultimatum. I said to God, if it's important to you that I remain a Jew, then give me a sign. I'm giving you to this and this date. By this and this date, I want a sign that my Jewishness matters to you. That there's something Jewish going on in this city in the middle of the most southern. There are cities farther south than Bariloche, but that's the farthest that Chabad has reached so far. Anyways, so he says, give me a sign. So I gave God a date. He says, right now, in the car with me, he walked out of the car to speak to Rabbi Klein, is my fiance. We're on the way now to our engagement party. She's very happy. She thinks this is great, we're going to our engagement. I'm smiling too, out on the outside. But on the inside, I feel like I'm dead. I feel like my life is over. And I'm waiting for God to give me a sign, because today is the last day that I told God, either give me a sign today or I'm going to get engaged to her. And now I see you with this menorah on your car, and I know this is a message and a sign from God. I was thinking about this tonight because I didn't take off my menorah from my car yet. And someone asked me, "Hey, Rabbi, is this tonight the 25th night of Chanuka?" So I do have to take it off the car, but it may be that it's serving a purpose now as well, except that it's letting the rain in. Anyways, so Rabbi and Mrs. Klein in the city of Bariloche, they trying for years to have children. They were blessed with their oldest daughter, Shana, after 5 years of marriage. Then 3 years later, they were blessed with their second son, Shneir. and they were trying to have more children. And years pass. 3 more, and they wrote a letter to the Rebbe asking the Rebbe for a blessing for children. As many chassidim do, they opened up a book of the Rebbe's letters, hoping that the page they open up to, there will be a response, something from the Rebbe about what they were looking for, a blessing for children. And they opened up the Rebbe's letters to a very interesting letter. The Rebbe said, because you are taking care of God's children, certainly God will bless you with children of your own. And then he continued, in general, where there is more quantity, there is more quality. In other words, it's not that, as people sometimes think, that the most important thing is quality, but when there's more quantity, quantity causes there to be more quality. So, but in your situation, Rebbe said, God will bless you with quantity and quality in the issue that they were seeking, a blessing for children. So, a little less than a month ago, they were blessed with quadruplets. They were blessed with 4 children. I don't know anybody who knows anybody who has quadruplets. Baruch Hashem, they were blessed with 4 children. And they say with 2 children, you can't sleep. With 3 children, it's impossible. With 4 children, it doesn't matter if you sleep. It just doesn't matter. You're off the charts. Anyways, the doctors, throughout his wife's pregnancy, throughout Mrs. Klein's discovering that they had quadruplets, the doctors couldn't point at one specific issue, that if this issue was resolved, then the children will be okay. It was a constant battle with the doctors and discussion and back and forth. But Rabbi Klein said miraculously, not only did God bless them with children, but more than that, God blessed him to meet people along the way, neighbors and friends, who constantly gave him and his wife the encouragement they needed to have the faith, despite the dire predictions doctors had, that things are going to be okay. And thank God, they were blessed with quadruplets. Interestingly, they went to Israel to have a child. It's not easy, by the way. They said in their first years as Chabad emissaries there in Barlok, they were able to, by the way, if I'm horribly pronouncing this city, I apologize. But that's what they pronounce it on Google as Barlok. Either way, in their first years in Barlok, they were able to fly in a relatively easy way. But now with 4 children, it's a 30-hour flight, and every flight is a saga. So he's in the hospital in Israel. There's better doctors when they're working, especially for such a situation. And he said that in Tal HaShomer Hospital, he and his wife met another new mother, and the doctors told this new mother that in order for you to have a child, it's possible, but it would be literally 1 in a million chance for you to have a baby. So she said she wasn't from a Chabad family or anything, but someone told her that the Rebbe said that by keeping the laws of family purity carefully, that is a segula, that's a spiritual remedy to have a blessing for children. So she took that very seriously, and she reviewed the laws of family purity, and she was blessed naturally with a child. So Rabbi Klein said, if the doctors told her there's a chance 1 in a million of having a child, having a child naturally is probably 1 in a billion. But either way, she was blessed beyond all odds with a child. And bottom line is, we take care of God's children. All of us are God's children. We pay attention, look out for God's children, then God blesses our own children. And the main blessing we're looking for, as Yaakov blessed his son Yehuda, he blessed him that Gur Arya Yehuda, Yehuda is a lion cub. He was referring to how Mashiach will come, and Mashiach will be like the lion that was the king of all animals. Mashiach will rule the world. And in a similar way, Yaakov promised Yehuda that even before Mashiach comes, Yadcha ba'oref evecha, your hand will be in the back of the neck of your enemies, meaning that all the anti-Semites and all those who hate the Jewish people will be filled with dread and fear from the Jewish people, and they will not bother them. Even before the coming of Mashiach, as the Gemara says, when the voice of Yaakov is heard in the synagogues, the hands of Esau have no power. So may Hashem bless all of us that we should see the reunion of all of us together in the Beis Hamikdash, B'karav Mamish, which see it before the 10th of Tevis, so that this fast day becomes transformed to become a day of simcha, v'sason, joy and gladness, and yantif. A good tevach and a tzlachar av Tevis.